I'm Craig McLean, and just recently I had a viewer ask about how I mounted the shell to the trolley, the basically frame on wheels. So I'm basically going to go through in this video just exactly how I've mounted it, the different options, and I'll also go into a little bit of detail about how you mount them to spits as well. Because when I think about it, I've had quite a few people ask similar questions. So this one's for you, Tony Eilert. I hope that's how you pronounce your name. But everybody else that's also asked questions, this should hopefully be helpful to yourselves. So we'll start at the back by discussing the frame itself. And what this frame is, or what it previously was, is an industrial set of aircraft steps. This was the wheel frame at the bottom, and it was getting cut up and scrapped. And a good friend of mine who it belongs to realised its potential in what we're doing with it here, because this isn't the first car that's been on it. It won't be the last. So we managed to acquire it from scrap, and it's been really useful down the years. And one of the good things about it is, and I would recommend if you're building your own, to fit it with some good big casters, because these big casters with the brakes as well make it really easy to manoeuvre. I can actually manoeuvre this car around the workshop myself with relative ease. The little tiny casters, sort of the 40-50 mil wheels, are really hard work. These are brilliant. So basically, it's just a box section frame. You can easily build your own as long as you've got access to a MIG welder and some box section. There's no reason why you couldn't build your own. And all I've done here, I've used the rear spring hanger mount and basically took some 40 mil by 40 mil box section, which is 3 mil wall. So that's the stuff there. It doesn't have to be pretty. This is old rusty box section. At the end of the day, we're not going for a beauty contest. We're going for something that's functional. You can spend a little bit more time than I have if you like. If you're gonna put many cars onto it, why not make it nice? If it's something you're going to be using for a lot of years, why not make a real nice job of it? I know that once this car's finished, these brackets will be chopped off, and different brackets will be mounted onto it in future to put different cars on it. So all I've done here is I've obviously cut the box section, picked up on one of the the cross sections on the frame. I've mounted one of the box sections, cut it to a certain length. I've actually made this, it used to be higher, these used to be longer to start with, and I've actually shortened these because I wanted to make it easier for the painter at the body shop to paint the roof. So I lowered it. So all it is, like I say, is 40 mil with 40 mil box section, MIG welded. I've actually MIG welded it all the way around. You don't have to, you can just tack it. But what I will say, if you're going to move the car around, as in on a trailer, move it to different places, I would definitely solid weld it. And I'll insert a picture now showing the car on the trailer, and you'll see there that the frame itself has been strapped down to the trailer. So you really want these welded solid if you are going to transport the car around, because obviously you don't want your car falling off the trolley and getting badly damaged. At the top, all we've done there, that's basically a tube. So along the top of there, that's basically a tube, and that is basically 20 mil conduit. And all I did was I drilled a 20 mil hole through the box section, cut the box section halfway through the hole, and then MIG welded a bit of tube that was cut to the right length to fit, between the spring hanger. MIG welded it in. You can just see it MIG welded there around the edge. Put a bolt through, and that's the back. Both sides are exactly the same, just through the rear spring hangers. You don't have to go through the spring hangers as long as you pick up somewhere structural on the body shell. You could pick up at the back spring hanger points. You can just see the hole there. See one point to it there. You could pick up further back there if your trolley went far enough back. As long as you're picking up on something structural, I don't think it would be a problem. The problem I've got here is I want to put an axle in this car in the coming year, and obviously to put the springs, the leaf springs on, these brackets are going to be in the way. So I am actually going to have to redesign these brackets myself to possibly pick up further forward somehow. I don't know yet. I'm going to have to give it some thought because they are in the way. It's been mounted like that on the back ever since I finished it, or ever since I started it rather. But at the front, I've changed it a couple of times. So I'll go to the front now and we'll discuss exactly how it's mounted to the front and how I have mounted to the front. in the past. So this is the front section of the same frame, and as you can see there, I've used another bit of box section which is bolted through into one of the cross legs of the frame, and I've used again some 20mm conduit which fits perfectly inside the pre-drilled hole in the front chassis leg. So as you can see there, I've just drilled a hole through the box section, MIG welded that bit of tube in, fed the tube through the hole, it comes out the other side. Same with the other side as well, exactly the same way, both sides, and they're bolted so I can actually unbolt it to make it easier to come on and off. That isn't the way I've always had it mounted. As you can see there's a crossbar, that's the crossbar there with the green tape on, and I used to have a bar coming up from that section. I think I've got a photo I can share with you, I'll put it up now. And that basically mounted on to the gearbox mounting points in the centre. The problem with that is, because it's right in the middle and you've got the overhang of the car either side, it tends to make them points crack. I ended up with some little airline cracks in the gearbox mounts because there's that much weight on the car overhanging it. So I maybe wouldn't go down that route. But again, all you have to do is pick up on somewhere structural on the body shell. You know, for example, your cross member here, you could easily bring some box sections up to the bottom of your cross member here. You've just got to try and design it for exactly what you're doing with the car. You know, if you're going to be cutting the floor pan out, you don't want it mounted to the floor pan. Because another way I've had it mounted in the past as well, I actually brought a box section. You can just see it's been chopped off there. That's the end of it, it's been chopped off. And I brought one all the way out, and then I brought some upstands, and I picked up on the bottom doorpost hinge, and that held the shell completely rigid while I replaced the full floor pan in the shell. So yeah, there's various ways. There's no right and wrong way in how to mount the shell onto the trolley, but this is just a couple of the ways I've done it in the past. Like I say, the first way was in the centre at the gearbox mounts. Second way was up to the bottom door hinge point, just up here. And then finally, I mounted it on the trolley just as it is now, before it went in for paint. So that's basically the frame and how it's mounted. Nothing to stop you making your own, and there's no right and wrong way how to mount it. As long as you use good structural steel and you pick up on good structural points of the body shell, there's no right and wrong way. Just go for it. Just you know, do your best with what you've got, and I don't think you'll have a problem. So now I'll just show a little bit of detail about how this shell used to be mounted on the rollover jig. I may as well go into that while I'm on the subject of this kind of thing. So I'll start off just by showing you a little bit of footage of the car on the jig, on the rollover jig. This was recorded quite a few years ago, and it was never intended to go into any YouTube video or anything like that. I basically recorded it for my own personal, I don't know, to say I've got a record of it, I suppose. I think I only put it on Facebook at the time to show people it in action. But here's a little bit of footage of the car on the rollover jig. So we now have the Mk1 on the rollover jig, or rotisserie, various different names for it. This basically means you can pull this pin here and rotate the shell through 360 degrees. So wherever you're working, you can be working in a comfortable position rather than lying on your back. Turn it upside down if you want. Makes this kind of work 10 times easier. So as you've seen the car on the jig, I'll explain a little bit of how I mounted the shell onto the jig. Again, it's not a hard and fast method of how it should be done. There's various ways of doing it. This is just the way we did it, and I'm sure other people have got their own ideas and maybe even better ideas, but this is just the way that I did it myself. So the brackets were already made by a mate of mine. He had his Mk2 Escort on it, and the Mk2 Escort brackets do fit the Mk1, where the only thing you have to do is drill a different hole in the bracket. So I'll insert a picture now showing you the front bracket running through this opening here. So the bracket comes through, mounts onto the bar along the front, and in the back of there, around the back of that cutout, if you come through the back, you'll see it comes along there, and then you've got these two holes here. So we basically made a bracket that mounted onto this section here with two 10mm bolts that goes through these two holes and went up through that opening out the front onto the spit. The problem with that is if you wanted to do your Raptor coat underneath, that bracket is right in the way of where you want it to coat. So I actually got round that by making a set of these. Now, again, I think these are about 5-6mm steel, something like that. And what these did was, these mounted onto the inside of the chassis leg, sort of, you know, in the engine bay and come underneath. The problem with that is it brought the centre of gravity so far down, it made turning the shell over really difficult. And I knew that was going to happen. The fact that, you know, I made these brackets for such a short time, I wasn't bothered. It was only on these brackets for a couple of weeks. So originally, the bracket came out here. I'll insert a picture now showing you the pivot point for the spit, which is more or less up here at bonnet line. So as you can see by the yellow arrow, the centre point on the rollover jig is around about where my finger is. So if you follow that line round, that's almost, you know, centre of the car. So it brings the centre of gravity exactly where you need it. It makes turning the shell over a one-handed operation, nice and easy. So when I made these brackets to come out the bottom instead of through this opening, I knew it was going to put, you know, drop the shell right out of balance and make it hard to turn over, and it was a nightmare. You basically needed two hands on it and you had to fight it. But like I say, it was only on them brackets for a couple of weeks while I did the Raptor coat, so I wasn't bothered. But I would definitely recommend that you try and get the pivot point somewhere near the centre point, the centre of gravity of the car, to make it a lot easier for yourself. So at the back, the spit was mounted to the bumper mounting holes. They've got some structural brackets on the inside that goes to the floor, but I wouldn't recommend just using them on their own. We actually made a set of brackets that came off the bottom of that bar, down underneath, you know, down underneath this panel and clamped onto the chassis leg as well to give you a little bit more strength. So yeah, we used the two bolts on the back panel and then again another set of brackets underneath just to give you more strength. And that again brought the pivot point somewhere here so that the shell was nicely balanced for turning it over. So that pretty much concludes, you know, what I wanted to discuss in this video. Just a bit of a brief video on some of the questions I've been asked in the past. And I hope I've touched down on everything. If I haven't, please let me know. I'll answer any questions that I can. Thanks very much for watching. I know it'll be useful to some of you, maybe not others. But like I say, if there is anything you need to know, please feel free to drop it in the comments. And I'll definitely do my best to answer your questions. So thanks very much for watching. And I'll see you very shortly on the next usual video of the RS2000 reassembly.